Welcome to the shooting show. This week we're back with Gary Green for some daylight fox calling action. Plus Byron shows us how to cure a creepy trigger on a popular rimfire. It's high summer, it's the middle of the afternoon and the sun is shining. Perfect time for a foxing expedition. Gary Green certainly thinks so.
So here we are in Essex again. A gentleman friend of mine on a small holding, not far from home, not far from the fox box also, as the crow flies maybe a mile directly south. We've got a situation here again, small holding, everything near enough killed now, just 1 or 2 bantams left. And he's seen the fox in the daytime cutting across this field to our left here. So I'm going to try and sit up and call this fox out at 3 o'clock on a hot Tuesday afternoon. I think we've got a good chance of getting it, but we shall see what we can do. The field we're going to be shooting in is clear of livestock, so that's good. Yeah, just, it's a difficult one. The daytime calling's hard, but, with a bit of luck. I've done it here before a long time ago for the gent. Hopefully we can do it again. Use a Fox Pro 3 with a remote. Extremely good bit of kit. I think I was probably one of the first to have one. I actually bought it from America. It's been responsible for a lot of foxes. Lost track really now, how many, but a lot. It's the only way this time of day. As I say, it's 3 o'clock, boiling hot, as you can see. Not very comfortable, but there's a job to do, so here we are, we set out and see what we can do. Put the caller out at about 80 metres from the high seat, so it's natural, it's coming from low down, so all the attention of the fox will be going into the caller at normal level. That way, where we are, the attention is off of us. If I'm calling from up high, I don't like doing it. I do it occasionally from the fox box, just to get a bit of attention to get a shot. But hopefully with this system, it's tried and tested. It's a good bit of kit. And it will pull them away from where we are, and their attention, their eyesight, ears will all be on where the call's coming from. We'll try to call very low to start with and build up a bit louder. It will resonate and travel a long way here, so it's a good possibility of pulling something in here.
The call resounds across the field. He may be sweltering in his face mask, but Gary shows his professionalism by remaining vigilant as ever. He'll have plenty of time to sunbathe when this fox is in the bag. The only movement we've seen so far is from rabbits at the other end of the field. Conditions don't seem right for the arrival of a fox, but Gary clearly knows something we don't. He might not be in his fox box, but Gary's in a pretty good situation all the same. He's got top-class equipment, an unobstructed field of view, and the remote control function of the Fox Pro caller means he doesn't have to get out of his high seat. Suddenly we hear a different noise, but this isn't the caller. It's the alarm call of a pheasant. That can only mean one thing. A predator is about to make an appearance.
Here we go. I didn't think that old pheasant was going to lie.
The Fox Pro is doing its job, and Charlie is coming in, but it stays right at the edge of shootable range. Varying the volume of the call brings it closer, but only slightly. This is going to be very tight.
Gonna have a long shot, James.
Gary fits to the rifle for the shot, but things go wrong at the worst possible moment.
Couldn't have made it any harder. For some reason the gun didn't cock. Thought that safety felt tight. What happened there? Oh well, got to be ready for everything in this game. A little bit of added pressure. Ooh. First of all, I see the rabbit jive out the edge, then another one, and then prior to that, the old cock pheasant was kicking up, roughly alarm calling about every 3 seconds. Fairly accurate them, they don't normally lie, a bit like little owls. When they kick up, you know there's one about. And then all of a sudden another rabbit flew out and just looked bolt upright straight back at the hedge. I just looked 10 yards on and I just see him sitting there, and then he laid down, he was just stalking that rabbit for ages. But surprisingly, he didn't really want to come right down. I don't know why, but as it worked out, it didn't matter too much, but he was definitely in the wood there. We called him out. I don't know for sure if that's a cub or a little vixen, but we'll find out in a bit. That's always a good one to get here because there's a lot of stuff, a lot of songbirds here, a lot of ground nesting stuff. Just helps them out a bit. We'll try and keep them down. Apparently it's the first time on Hill Field that there's been lapwings, so must be doing some good round here. It's a tiny little thing, but been round here a fair while, I'd say, going by her nails. Yeah. Wily though, didn't want to come right down to the call. I mean, I paced it out and it's actually 171 yards. A lot further than I thought instantly. But looking back to the seat, yeah, it's a good way.
Thankfully, the shot was well taken, and this fox clearly won't be menacing the chickens anymore.
Job done, got the result we wanted. Got an indication, as I would hope we would. We can never be sure when a pheasant kicks up like that. It's definitely the predator we want. It's a predator of sorts normally when they do this sort of 3-second pip. But it did work out, and we did have a couple of rabbits on the hedge that showed us that the fox was coming down, and then it showed itself and laid down stalking and just kept calling. It didn't want to run out to the call, but it came out to have a look, and then it went long. I went to get on the shot long, as you know, and something with the safety, I'm not sure quite. I don't think there's any problem with the rifle, I think it's me. Maybe just not quite chambered correctly, whatever. But re-bolted and got the shot off. It was about 171 yards in the end and stone dead, which was good. So hopefully a bit of relief for the chap here, but unfortunately a lot of killings already took place. But hopefully it'll stem the flow a bit for the time being. But I think a nice cool drink now, I don't know what. Yeah, but no, good result, good result.
Gary there, once again bringing home the goods against all odds. And now, the Shooting Show News.
This is the Shooting Show News. Farmers are getting geared up for a week of disruption after Antis claimed the badger culls would start today. The timing of the culls has not been officially revealed, although a chief constable did at one point say they would begin in August. Now the NFU has brought an injunction to try to stop protesters going near culling zones, disrupting farmers' activities and compromising safety in the area. More in the next issue of Modern Gamekeeping. David Cameron has spoken out in favour of deer stalking, calling it one of the most defendable field sports. While on holiday on the Isle of Jura, the Prime Minister revealed he had given up stalking himself, but claimed it was because of a bad back rather than political motivation. He went on to describe stalking as a lot of crawling through heather, sometimes for a very, very long time. To see how real stalkers do it, don't miss Sporting Rifle magazine. Scotland's red deer are breeding earlier each year, according to scientists studying the impact of climate change on the species. The longer growing season in spring and summer is thought to improve grazing throughout the year and result in an earlier rut. Calving dates and antler casting and cleaning dates have come forward by as much as 12 days since records began, said the report. 5 shooting venues are to benefit from a £200,000 grant, Sport England has announced. Tees Valley Target Sports Club and Farncombe and Godalming Rifle Club will receive government investment, alongside 3 multi-sport venues that offer shooting. This is part of the Inspired Facilities project, which funds the renovation and modernisation of local sports facilities. And finally, get counting your grey partridges. That's the message from the Game and Wildlife Conservation Trust. Although overwinter survival rates were up to 46% this year, the Trust estimates it could take 5 years to fully recover after the disastrous conditions of 2012. The Trust's Dr. Julie Ewald said the wild grey partridge was not out of the woods yet, having suffered a drastic decline of more than 86% over the past 40 years. That was the Shooting Show News.
I get to test a lot of rifles for the shooting show and for Sporting Rifle. And one of the biggest problems you come up against with an off-the-shelf rifle, especially at the budget end of the scale, is really quite poor triggers. Triggers that are too heavy or triggers that have a creepy break are a real hindrance to shooting accurately. And what we're going to do on the shooting show over the coming months is show you how to rectify some of these trigger problems and also show you how to retrofit aftermarket units to your existing rifle and hopefully improve your accuracy. What we're going to start with this week is a rifle that a lot of people will already own, and that's the humble CZ Rimfire, a very, very popular rifle. And the fix to correct what is an inherently creepy trigger is really quite simple and won't cost you an arm and a leg. Now, before we do anything to the rifle at all, it's important to stress that safety is of paramount importance. If you're making any adjustments that you're not happy with, or you think that your rifle's safety has been compromised because of something that you've done, stop, do not use it, and take it to a qualified gunsmith to give it a check over. But the process that we're going through today is really quite straightforward. It's easy to follow. The unit doesn't really involve very much. It's a unit from Rimfire Magic, and it's a simple addition to the trigger unit that already exists. The first thing we've got to do is take the screws out of the action, show you what the problem was to start with, and show you how we're going to correct it. Now, most people at home won't have a rifle vise or any specialized gunsmithing equipment, so I've left that all to one side, and the only equipment I'm using is tools that you should have at home. The only exception being is that I've got a torque driver here, but I'm not using the torque settings, I'm only using the screwdriver bits. So we'll go ahead and take these screws out just so that we can remove the woodwork. Now, the one thing that you must be very careful with is to get a screwdriver bit that fits your rifle snugly. There is nothing worse than fitting it into your action screws, slipping over the top and chewing up your screws. It looks tacky and it's just not particularly nice. Now, as you undo the last screw, just be sure to keep your hand on top of the stock with the metal work down, because otherwise it'll come apart in your hand like that. You don't want that to happen. And with the two action screws out at either end, the woodwork should just slip away like that. First things first, keep your workstation nice and tidy. I'm going to prop the stock up in the corner here. I've got the two action screws, put those in a tub. I'm going to use the lid of my torque driver. On the CZ, there's also a fixing bolt which slides out of a dovetail groove. Just take that out because it's prone to getting lost. Put that in here as well. Now we can get to the problem at hand, which is a creepy trigger. I've inserted the bolt, I've checked that the chamber is clear, so I'm going to slowly squeeze the trigger and show you the movement between these two surfaces here, which is the cocking piece and the sear engagement. Now, if I just slowly squeeze the trigger, you can see all this movement here before the rifle even goes off. And this is the problem. This is what will prevent you shooting accurately when you don't consistently know exactly when your rifle's going to go off. Essentially, what we're going to do to fix this problem is reduce the engaged surface area between these two faces. And we do this with the Rimfire Magic components, which really just consist of 3 springs for your trigger pull, and you can see where these fit here, and 2 brass tubes which fit underneath the unit, and what they do is they raise the cocking piece to reduce the actual engagement itself. Now, the first thing that you will note is that your 2 tubes are different colours. One's purple and one's red. Now, I've actually fitted this unit before, so I know that the size that I need is the red one, which is the smaller of the 2. But unfortunately, it's a little bit trial and error, because every one of these CZ units will be slightly different. And sometimes the purple tube, which is the larger one, is just a little bit too big, and you can end up with a trigger pull which is just too fine and sometimes not actually safe. So you need to downsize it to the red tube. I found inserting the red tube gave me a break that I was very happy with, so I never actually even bothered inserting the purple tube. And if you go about it that way, you will know that you don't need to push the limits. So the next thing that we need to do is actually take this trigger unit to pieces so I can show you how these brass tubes actually go about correcting the issue at hand. The first thing you need to start this process is get yourself a punch that fits the diameter of these two pins here, and then find yourself a solid object, some sort of square bar that you can put underneath the trigger so that you can knock the pins out efficiently. And this just rests under here like that so that nothing gets damaged. The punch fits the pins. Get yourself a hammer and then just gently knock them out. It will require a little bit of force, but you shouldn't feel like you're knocking in a 6-inch nail, and they should come out just like this. That's one. As you knock the back pin right through, you want to leave your punch inside the hole, turn it over, just give it a couple more taps, just like that, so that the pin knocks out, and leave your punch in there. And the reason for that is that you don't want this back spring here, which gives you the tension on the trigger, pinging out in your face. And once you've got it like this, front pin's loose, the back pin's out, you just hold the trigger unit back with your finger and pull your punch out. Now if you slowly let go, you will see that everything comes to pieces just like that. Now you want to put all of the parts that you've taken out to one side. I'll put them back in the lid of my torque driver. We have the spring, the actual trigger itself. There's also a little washer which goes against the receiver on top of the spring. Don't lose that, that goes in there. And of course the back pin which we knocked out, the front pin is still attached to the actual trigger itself. Now with all of these components removed, I can show you exactly how we're going to resolve the creep issue. And simply what we do is raise this cocking piece here. And we do that by inserting one of the little brass tubes just through this hole here, which will give it a bit more height and reduce the engagement of the surface areas and remove the creep. I've got my brass tube in my fingers here, and if I just lift up the cocking piece with the receiver sitting on its back, you should be able to slide this tube just through the gap there and out the other side, and it'll stick in like that just under the tension of the cocking piece. Now what you've got to do is grab your trigger, which remember still has the front pin in it, lay it over where it came, like this, and you should be able to just push that front pin back through the hole and through the brass tube, and if you fiddle it just a little bit on the other side, you should be able to get it to locate in the opposite hole in the trigger. Now the next step is to decide if you want to change the trigger pull weight, and you do that with a set of 3 springs that come with the trigger unit kit. Now I was quite happy with the pull weight, so I'm going to just insert the spring that the rifle originally came with. And you do that by sliding it back up the little rod. Now this is the trickiest bit of this whole operation. You need to grab the washer that came at the end of this and place it back on while inserting it back in the locating hole. Now you will note that the washer is actually not circular, but it has a flat edge on it, and that relates to the flat edge on the pin. So you've got to make sure you get it the right way around. And once you do that, you just slide the spring back, and using both hands, rotate the trigger unit down and towards the hole, and with a bit of fiddling you should be able to get the pin back through the hole. And you know it's working when you can squeeze the trigger like this. And once you know that it's located correctly, you must make sure that you don't let go of the trigger unit, otherwise all that hard work will just spring up into the air. So what I do is just grab the punch that you knocked the pin out with and just slot it through the hole here, and then that will keep everything in place and under tension. And once you've done that, you can find your rear pin and insert it from the opposite side while retrieving your punch at the same time. Once you've got the pin halfway through, you're almost there, but the last few millimeters of each pin will have to be finished with the punch and the hammer, much in the same process that we started with. So if I just place this underneath here, and I've made sure that the holes are lined up on both sides so I know that I'm not knocking the pin just against a hole and a trigger unit that's not lined up. I just do this, grab my punch and just gently tap it into place. Now if you feel like there's excessive resistance, it's probably because something is shifted and the trigger is not lined with the holes in the receiver. Stop, turn it over, have a look. You don't want to damage your rifle while doing this. If you knock the pin in, just so it's flush, that's the rear pin done. You'll see that the front pin needs the same treatment. Now that, believe it or not, is the job complete. But of course we have to test it to make sure that we've achieved what we want to achieve and the rifle is still safe. So the first thing we're going to do is insert the bolt, which on the CZ you have to pull the trigger to insert. Like that. Of course I know the rifle is already clear. Lock down the bolt. I'm going to pull the trigger while watching the sear engagement and see if there's any creep. Doesn't seem to be. It feels pretty good. Now I think we've achieved what we want to with that. The pull weight feels fine, but the only way to really get to grips with it is to put it back in the stock and pull the trigger like you would if you were actually shooting the rifle. So you can just place it in loosely without putting the action screws in. Lock the bolt down. You'll have to just hold the rifle in because obviously the action screws aren't in. Just close your eyes and squeeze the trigger. And see if you can feel any creep. That feels pretty good to me. Now the last thing that you have to do to make sure that everything is still operating the way it should is test the safety catch. So cock the rifle again, apply the safety, take the safety off, do it a couple of times, make sure the rifle is not going off when you actually take the safety catch back, and then dry fire it again, make sure everything's operating correctly. And with that, we just now need to put the rifle back together the opposite way that we took it to pieces, and you have a creep-free trigger on your CZ.
Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. We're out every Monday, 7:30 PM UK time. This is The Shooting Show.